to be talking about for loops. Some of you may have been here for a previous session where we talked about regular loops. For loops are a more advanced version. But quickly, let's go over what we saw before, which was a repeat loop. And a repeat loop is very well named because it takes something and it does it over and over again. So if we look at these blocks, it says move forward. You want to move forward really far, maybe you put 10 of them. But instead of having to drag 10 blocks over and over and over, what you can do is do a loop that just says move forward 10 times. And some reasons this is good is it avoids copying, and it's easy to read, and it's easier to change later. If you want to change it from 10 times to 20 times, all you have to do is change the number instead of having to drag in more blocks or throw blocks away.
Awesome. Thank you. 前回の授業では、リピート、何回も何回も繰り返す動作でループするっていうことを学びましたよね。ループっていうのは何度も同じことを繰り返すときに使うもので、例えばこの今左のものだったら move forward、前に進むっていうブロックを10個、同じものをずっと何回も並べて、やっとこの8、3が前に10個動くっていう動きをしてるんだけど、ループっていうのを使うと、このピンクのブロックだよね。10っていう数字を打つだけで、その中にあるものを10回繰り返してくださいっていうことになります。なので、例えば10個じゃなくて20個動いてほしかったら、この10っていう数字を10に変えるだけで20個動いてくれるので、とってもね、後から変更するのが楽になります。Alright, Greg?
And the other thing we want to review is a variable. So a variable, you can think of it kind of like a box, and it holds either a number or some text, and it stores it for later. So if you wanted to store the fact that you have 30 tickets in your wallet, but you might forget it, then you can put it in a variable, and it'll keep track. But what's even cooler is that it can change. So if you put the value 30 in there, but then you win another ticket, you can just change it to 31. And it'll work just as well. So it helps us keep track of information. And a variable is going to be a part of the loop that we're going to do today. So, yeah.
Okay. 前回の授業では、あと variable、変数、変な数って書いて変数っていうことも習ったよね。で、この変数っていうのは何か情報を変数っていうもの箱のようなもので、その中に情報を入れて保管しておくっていうものだったよね。例えば、その箱のタイプは int。数字を入れておく、保管する箱だったりとか、string は文字、テキストを入れるものだよね。で、boolean っていうのは、true or false の2択だけで、2択だけを入れる箱のようなもので、で、この箱の中身はどんどん入れ替えることができるので、これ今日のループでもよく使います。Right?
And today is going to be a new day for CS in English. We're going to be coding in JavaScript. So in the past, we've seen Scratch, which was dragging blocks around. We've done pseudocode in Jamboard, but today we're going to try out coding in JavaScript. And JavaScript is a language that's used to make pretty much all of the websites you see. So if you ever go on the internet, it's going to be coded with JavaScript. So what you learn today can be very useful. The one thing about JavaScript is there's going to be a lot of symbols that look a little confusing. Like you can see on the screen, we've got these curly braces, we've got parentheses, we've got semicolons that we'll need to use sometimes. And when the first time you see code, you'll see some words and you're going to see all these symbols interspersed. And it might be intimidating, but if you just hang in there, it'll be all good and you get used to the symbols real quickly. So just don't be intimidated by those and focus on everything we're going to be learning.
Okay. で、今日これから皆さんと一緒にやっていくのは Real Coding って言って、本当にみんなが私たち現役のエンジニアが使ってるコンピューター言語を今日は皆さんに触ってもらおうと思います。で、その言語っていうのが JavaScript っていうウェブサイトでもよく使われているコンピューター言語で、今日はこれを皆さんと一緒に使っていきたいと思います。なので皆さん今日は私たち本当のエンジニアが毎日触ってるようなと同じようなものを見ていくので、最初はね、すごい変なシンボルとかわけのわからないものがいっぱいあると思うんだ。例えばこの下にあるいろんな種類のカッコだったりとか、セミコロンだとか、いろんなちょんちょんだとかなんかいろいろ出てくるんだけど、とりあえずシンボルはいっぱいあるんだけど、最初はあまり気にせず、そこがわからないからといって、だんだんゆっくり慣れていくので、それ以外のものを見ていきましょう。はい、ということで今日は JavaScript を皆さんで触っていきます。Okay.
All right, so with all that out of the way, let's get into for loops. So for loops is a way to loop through a piece of code, but it's specifically counting based. So in this example, we're going to have a variable, which we saw before. So a variable stores a value, and we're going to call it I. And honestly, we call it I just because it's easier to type. It's just one letter. It's very easy to type, but you can call it anything you want. You can call it after your dog if you want. But we're going to start counting at 1, and then we're going to count all the way to 10. And this I++ is just a way to say it gets 1 bigger every time. So we're going to break down exactly how this works, because I know it's a lot of letters and symbols and probably looks pretty confusing, but what this does is it counts from 1 to 10, and then anything that's inside of the loop is going to happen every time you count. So you count to 1, and then you're going to print whatever I is, and then you count to 2, and then you print whatever I is, and then you go all the way down, and it's a really convenient way to print something 10 or 100 times without having to write it over and over again. So as we were showing before, we have the 2 big numbers in here are 1 and 10, and that's the numbers we're going to be counting between. So it starts from 1 and it counts all the way to 10, but you can set it to anything. So if we wanted, we could change this text to be 100 to 110, or we could say 1,000 to 10 billion. You really could do that. And the reason that's so helpful is computers can do things that are annoying for humans to do. We don't want to sit there and count to 1,000,000 by ourselves, but we can make a for loop, make a computer do it really easily.
Can you go back one slide?
Yes.
はい。じゃあ、今日は、for loop っていうものをみんなと勉強していくんだけど、さっき言ったように、ループっていうのは何回も同じことを繰り返すってことを言ったよね。で、この左のなんかすごいいっぱいシンボルが出てるんだけども、このカッコの中、まずカッコの左側に for って書いてあるね。これで for loop ってことになります。で、カッコの中には何を何回繰り返せばいいかっていうことが要は書かれていて、で、この var が variable の略ね。で、この i っていうのがその箱の名前になります。なので、この i っていう箱の中に最初に1っていう数字を入れるじゃない。で、あとはこの2つ目に出てくる数字の10っていうのが、1から10までの間を繰り返してね。で、i は1個ずつ足していくよってことになるので、これは i が下に書いてあるように、1、2、3、4、5、6、7、8、9、10っていう風にどんどん変わっていきます。で、毎回変わるごとに、for loop の中のもの、ここで言うと print i っていうことをします。Alright, can you go back? Can you go to the next one? Okay, thank you. で、さっき言ったように、この i を1から10まで数えてって、で、数えてる間、下のことをやってねってやるので、その1とか10とかいう数字を変えるだけで何回繰り返すかっていうことが変わります。Right?
So we've seen that we had a repeat loop that can do something a number of times. And now we have a for loop that does the same thing over and over again. In this case, it's printing and printing and printing and printing. But the key difference between a for loop is that what the for loop does can be different every time. If you use the value of I inside of what you're doing, for example, we're going to print whatever I is. That's different than a repeat loop, because a repeat loop has to just do the exact same thing over and over again. But a for loop, I can change since it's a variable, and therefore what you do can be different.
はい。じゃあ、さっき for loop は何回も同じことを繰り返すってことを言ったけど、じゃあ for loop とただ繰り返すって何が違うのっていう話なんだけれども、左上のこの黄色いコードね、これは for loop を使ってます。で、何をやるかっていうと、i っていう variable をプリント、つまり画面上に出してくださいって言ってるんだよね。で、この i、さっき言ったように、どんどん数が変わっていくじゃない。ということは、今、この左上に書いてあるコードを実行すると、1、2、3、4、5、6、7、9、10って出るんだよね。つまり、毎回ループするごとに実行されるものがちょっと変わってる。で、逆に、repeat、この左下の黄色いコードだけど、repeat 10 times は全く同じことを10回繰り返してください。なので、この左下のコードを実行すると、hello, hello, 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 hello。10回全く同じことが実行されます。このループごとに違うことをしたいときは for loop。で、全く同じことをしたい場合は repeat って感じで、それが for loop と repeat の違いです。Right?
All right, so we've seen what a for loop looks like, and there's a lot going on. So let's break down exactly what each part of it means. So we'll see in the middle part we have, or in the top line, we have for. That's what it's named after. So that's the letters. You just type for, and then we have three early parts. We have this green part, the red part, and the blue part. So if we take a look at the green one first, we're making a variable called I, and then we set it equal to 1. So that's making that box that stores whatever I is, and that's the green one. And then the red part is telling the computer how long do you want it to go. Because it could start counting at 1, and it could stop at 10, it could stop at 100, it could stop at 50,000. So we have to tell it when to stop. And what this is saying is keep going as long as I is less than or equal to 10. So what that means is it starts at 1, and 1 is smaller than 10, so it keeps going, and then it does 2 and 3, and those are still smaller than 10. And then once it gets to 9, 9 is still smaller than 10, and then it counts to 10, and it's like, oh, okay, now we're done. And if it were to try out 11, it would say, oh, 11 is bigger than 10, we're done. So that's this red part, and it tells you when to stop. And the blue part is tells the variable what to do after every time. So after every time you do through this loop, then I++ is a fancy computer way of saying get bigger by 1. So it starts at 1, and then you add 1, you get 2, and then you add 1, you get 3, you add 1, you get 4. This will almost always stay the same, so it's not the most important thing to know exactly what it does. You can kind of just memorize that whatever the variable is going to have ++ after it, because you usually want to count up by 1. But if you wanted, you could change it. So that's the 3 parts. You make a variable, you tell it when to stop, and you tell it what to do to change the variable.
Cool. じゃあ、さっき見たこのすごくよくわからない括弧の中身を詳しく説明していきます。まず最初の一番左側の緑色のところね。左側のところ、これは var I equals 1って言って、さっき言ったように、この variable I っていう箱の変数に1っていう数字を入れます。なので、この最初のパートが creating the variable って言って変数を作るところになります。二つ目、この red part、赤いところですね。この I less or equal less than or equal to 10。これが、ループを何回繰り返すか。何回繰り返すかというか、その I がどういう状態になったらループが終わるのかっていう処理で、この赤い文字を見ると、count as long as I is less than equal to 10ってことで、I が10以下、10を含む10より小さい数だったら繰り返してくださいってことになります。で、最後、この青いところ、the blue part。ここは、incrementing the variable で、毎回ループするたびに何をすればいいのか。で、この場合は I++ って書いて、これは I を1ずつ足してください。毎回ループすることに I に1を足してくださいっていう処理になります。なので、この全体として見ると、まずグリーンのところで variable I equals 1を作って、で、赤いところで、less than 10だったらループしてください。で、ブルーのパートで毎回ループするごとに I に1を足してくださいってことで、I が1から10まで1個ずつカウントされていきます。で、I が10になったところで、その赤いところね、が I is less than equal to 10という式に、11になった瞬間にこれは当てはまらないので、ループが終わります。Alright, did you get that?
Cool. So the next part we're going to look at is what's inside of the for loop. So definitely the hardest part is this first line. So if you followed through that, awesome job. The next part is going to be simpler. So basically this part is like the inside of a repeat loop. You can put anything here. So far we've been doing a lot of printing, because that's a pretty simple example to understand, but you could put anything. You can change the variable's value. You could create another variable inside the loop. You could change the value of some other variable. You could ask the user for input. The possibilities are limitless. So anything that you want to do over and over again, you can put on the inside of a for loop.
はい。で、さっきのこのサンプルコードでは、for ループを回すごとに print I の数字を画面上に出してくださいって出したんだけれども、もちろんこの for ループの中には何を入れても大丈夫です。本当に、例えば掛け算をするとか足し算をするでもいいし、何かとっても複雑なことを、例えばループが回る限り、宿題を上から下まで全部やるみたいな感じのループでも大丈夫です。はい、この中には何を入れてもいいんだよってことだよね。はい、Thank you.
And the last thing we're going to talk about is all the little symbols. So the computer needs to know what part of the statement is what. So it uses things like parentheses and semicolons and curly braces to break things apart. So before we saw that there were the different colored parts. So this part was the green part, and this part was the red part, and this part was the blue part. And so in between each of those parts, we're going to put a semicolon, which is a dot and a comma underneath. And the semicolon just helps to divide it apart. So it says this part is the red one, this part's the blue one. And then around the whole top line, we have a parenthesis. So we have one on each side. And then around the inside part of the loop, which we were saying like can be lots of different things, you put the curly braces. So if we look on the side here, this is kind of what it looks like when you simplify it. So we have 4, and then we have that top line with those 3 different colored parts, and we put a semicolon between each of the different parts, and the parentheses give it a nice big hug and hold it all together. And then all the inside part is surrounded by the curly braces. So this is the part that it's important to not be intimidated and just bear with it. But I promise you'll get used to it, and we're going to do some more examples. And when you see the symbols always in the same place, it starts to make a lot of sense.
Alright. じゃあ、さっき最初の方でシンボルとかいろんな、よくわからない記号がいっぱい出てくるって言ったけど、ここで全部説明しますね。for loop っていうのをパソコンに分かってもらうためには、ある程度の文法みたいなものが必要です。例えば日本語でもさ、点だったり丸だったり、鍵括弧とかだったり、いろんなルールがあるじゃない。それを同じようにパソコンにも分かってもらうために文法が必要で、この for loop っていう文法を正しく書くためには、この右の方に青く書いてある for、そしてカッコで囲んであげる。そして、さっき言った緑、赤、青の3つのパートを分けるために、このセミコロンっていうチョンコロンみたいな感じの記号がセミコロンって言うんだけど、その3つのパートを2つのセミコロンで分ける。これが、for loop を書く文法になります。で、for loop の中のものを実行するってさっきからずっと言ってるけど、何が中なのって話なんだけど、その中のものっていうのが、この右下の青く書いてある、このヘニョヘニョの形の curly braces という記号で、囲んであげることでよって、for loop の中のものはこれになるよっていうものになります。はい、わかったかな？ Thank you.
Okay, so let's review and let's take one last look at this for loop we've been looking at. So we have all the symbols we were just talking about in yellow. We have the parentheses that go around the whole top line. We have our 3 segments. We create a variable. We tell the computer how long it should be looping for. And then we increment or increase the variable. And then we have the part that we're repeating over and over, which is going to be printing. In this case, we're printing hello. Before we were maybe printing the value of I. And then we just make sure to put the curlies around the loop part.
じゃあ全部の復習するよ。いろいろ色が出てるけど、みんな大丈夫かな？まず最初に for loop と書くための for を書きます。そして、緑色のところが variable、変数を作るところだよね。なので、var I equals 1。で、how long should it loop？ 何回繰り返せばいいの？どれぐらいループすればいいのっていうのが赤いところですね。I が10を含む10以下の数字だった場合はループをする。で、最後の、青いところが、ループするごとに何を変えるのっていうところで、i を一つずつ足す、i++ っていう書き方になります。で、下のグレーの print hello のところが、for loop の中身。で、これを何回も繰り返すねっていうところだよね。で、この黄色いシンボルが、今説明した、for って書いたら、まず、カッコを書いて、で、その黄色、緑、青をセミコロン、黄色いセミコロンで分けてあげて、で、最後にヘニョヘニョの curly braces で、for loop の中身をくくってあげて、これを全部ループしてねっていうことになります。はい。最初は分かんなかった。このよくわからない英語の数式みたいな数字なのか英語なのかよくわかんないことも、これでみんな分かったかな？ Right? Thanks.
All right. So before we continue, I just wanted to give a quick demo of what this looks like. So this is going to be the site we're using for the next breakout room, but I'll just give you a quick preview of what a for loop looks like. So if we look in here, we'll see that this looks very similar to what we had in the slides. I can make this bigger. So we have our for loop. We have a variable here. So var I equals 1. This part is how long it's going to count. And this is the increment. So now finally we can click run and see what happens. So this is what the computer prints out. It counts through 1 to 10. And every one that it prints out, every one number that it gets to, it prints out. But now the great thing about code is that you can change it. So if I want to instead start at 15 and count to 30, then I can just rerun it and it'll do exactly that. And if you wanted to, instead of printing I, you wanted to print hello, you can change it and it'll print that instead. So this shows how loops are very flexible and it lets you do something over and over again. Instead of having to type this all yourself, if you wanted to type something 100 times, you can write a loop that does this 100 times, and in the blink of an eye, it makes all these hellos. So that kind of shows how loops are powerful. They can do something over and over again in the blink of an eye, faster than you could type it yourself.
Awesome. Can we start from the starting initial version?
Yes.
じゃあさっき説明したこの for loop を本当に動くコードとして皆さんに見せてみます。はい。このウェブサイトね、今回グレッグ大先生がわざわざみんなのためにパソコンで作ったんだよ。すごくないこれ。もうこのウェブサイトは今皆さんしか見れてないし、皆さんにしか使えない今日限りのものです。はい。ってことで、サンプル for loop を見てみると、さっき説明した、for loop でI が1から始まって10になるまで print I を実行してくださいになるよね。Could you run code?Could you click run code?Awesome. はい。で、さっき説明したように、今、print I をしてて、で、I が1から10に変わっているので、ここでは1から10まで順番に、正しく、プリントされてますね。Alright,、can we change the code to, let's say, 1 to 30? で、じゃあ、例えば1から10じゃなくて、1から30に変えたいって時は、数字を1個変えるだけで、なんと1から30までプリントされちゃうんです。すごくない？みんなさ、自分でさ、手で1、2、3、4、5、6、7、8、9、10ってなんか、計算してた、書いてたらすごく時間かかるけど、これを変えることによって数字を1個だけ変えるかだけで、どんどん変わっていくんです。Alright, could you change the print to, let's say, hello? じゃあ、この I のところを hello に変えると、何が変わるかな？何が起こるでしょう？はい。ということで、はいが1から30、つまり30回分ずらーっと並びます。すごくない？これ一瞬でさ、そう。めっちゃパワフルだよね。これがループのすごいところで、ちょっとだけ変えることによって結果がすごく変わるので、みんな例えば、Hi, Utako! ってさ、30回も言いたかったら、You don't have to say, Hi, Utako 30 times. You can just use this for loop to say that to me. 英語で言っちゃった。はい。ってことで、これが、ループのすごくパワフルなところです。Alright. Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much for making this website. And wow, this is so great. Wow.
All right, so that's an example of what for loops look like. So if we go back to the Jamboard, now it's going to be your turn. So we've seen a lot of for loops, and now we're going to take a look at some for loops, and we're going to have you sleuth out if you can find the mistakes. So some of these for loops are going to be correct, and some of them are going to be missing parts or maybe have some other mistakes in them. So it's up to you in your very own Jamboard that you were given in your breakout rooms. You're going to use this pen tool, and you're going to draw either a check mark or an X in the box if you think that they're correct or if they're incorrect. And if you've done that and have extra time, then you can try and play the part of the computer and guess what it's going to print out and write it in the white box on the right. So we'll give you a few minutes to do that, and then we'll check back in.
はい。じゃあ、ここからは皆さんに実際に問題に答えてもらおうと思います。さっきブレイクアウトセッションで TA から皆さん多分ジャムボードのリンクをもらったよね。そのリンクに飛んで、そしたら多分ね、上の方になんか数字が書いてあって、右とか左のこういうところがあるんで、その右ボタンを押してると、多分このページにたどり着きます。これがページ14かな？うん。なので14ページに行ったら、これと全く同じものがみんなの画面に映るはずです。で、これは皆さんのジャムボードなので、自由に書き込んでください。で、今ここに左に問題が2つ出てるけど、どっちの for loop が正しく書けてるかな？正しく書けてると思う方に、緑のチェック、このナイキのマークみたいなチェックを入れてください。うん、で、ボーナス問題、もし時間があったら、どんな結果がプリントされるかを、この右の四角いボックスの中に、right here って書いてあるところね、に書いてください。じゃあ、それで、TA はそれを見てフィードバックをお願いします。じゃあ、みんな3分間黙々と、自分で答えを書き込んでみてください。で、もしジャムボードのリンクがないよっていう人は、let us know in the chat。そしたら、頑張って見つけ出して皆さんにお渡しします。はい、ではどうぞ。
All right, while we are all waiting for your 3-minute work time ご参加になっているお父さんお母さん、もしよかったら Java、 英語で Java はコーヒーですので、コーヒー飲みながらお待ちください。 Java means coffee in English.
How do you say cheers in Japanese?
乾杯。
Kanpai. Okay.
I'm having my JavaScript.
Oh, I'm having my water.
There is actually a language. Well, we're using JavaScript today, but there's a separate, very different language called Java. So JavaScript and JavaScript, Java and JavaScript are very different.
Very different. Oh my
Very
God.
different.
It's deep today.
They came from the same origins, but they have since become drastically different.
And interestingly, a lot of programmers love to drink Java coffee, right? ね、プログラマーの方って結構コーヒーとかカフェイン取る方多いですよね。Java です。
Yeah, I am seeing a couple of requests in the chat. 結構ジャムボードファイルがないっていう、生徒さんがいますので、let me call out the classroom, and if you're the TA for that class, could you send the link to that student? And I think the missing people are L43. L43, I think it's the Eshwarn. I know you just joined. Could you give the Jamboard file to the kids by direct message in Zoom? And also L34, if you're here for L34, please send the link. Also L41, and L43. Yeah, L43, Eshran, please send a link to the Zoom.
And so if anyone is having trouble finding it, it's going to be on page 14. And you can click these arrows at the top to go left and right. So if I click here, I'll go forward and back. And you want to go until it says 14 out of 19. And that will be the your turn slide.
Oh, my bad. Eshran got reassigned to L33. TA for L42, please send the Jamboard file to Niji-san. And okay, L43, I think no one in the L43 has the link. Do we have anyone have free hands to give the link to L43?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you, Greg. All right, L43 people, hold tight. Greg Sensei is sending you the link.
Oh, sorry, I already have sent them.
Oh, you did. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Yatsu. All right, L43 people should have got it. And L34. Could a TA from L34, looks like Lily, can you send a link to Taiki-san? And also still missing L47. L47.
Everybody got the link?
L13, Nanaho-san. Can TA of L13 send the link? L41 is still missing the link. L35.
Oh, Haruma, yes. I will resend yours, Haruma.
Okay, let me take care of the Nanaho-san. Let me take care of L13. Nanaho-san, I just sent you one. L41, Haruma-san, let me give you one. Haruma-san, I just sent you one. Kihara-san, L35, I just sent you one. And Yukiko-san, L41, I just sent you one. All right, let us know if you're still missing the link to Jamboard file.
Yukiko, I just sent yours. Also, when I'm struggling to DM people because I click on the drop down, there's only like 10 people, and there's 100 people in the meeting. I don't know how to see more people or like search for someone to DM.
Oh, you can click on the people's name on their message, and it will directly like set the to address. Did that make sense? Did I make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it might maybe not be implemented on the website version because
Oh, I see.
I click on
Got it.
some of them.
I took
Maybe
care of Joshua as well, by the way.
Okay.
L47. Okay, let me take care of Momo-ha-san. Momo-ha-san from L35. Let me give you the link. Right, I sent you the link. Anyone else missing?
大丈夫かな ?L11 もお願いします。
Let me take care of that.
Okay, so I'm seeing some people in my breakout room are completely done, which is awesome. And now we can go for TAs. We can go to the end of the slideshow and use the stickers. You can copy and paste.
Cute stickers! なるほど。正解してると excellent。間違ってると try again なのかな
Somehow I'm having trouble copying between the two Jamboards, but take a screenshot, it works, or you can just draw for TAs.
Is this a bunny? Is this rabbit?
Yes.
Looks like a bunny. Yes.
I love rabbits.
Kind of Easter-like. ね、こちらはもうすぐイースターの春のお祭りがありますので、そのテーマにもなってるうさぎちゃんのスティッカーもらってくださいね。待ってるお友達もいるかな ?Thank you so much for being patient. Good と OK でした。All right, well, that's one way to say rabbit.
Well, we're starting with just page 14, and then we'll go over 14, and then we'll start doing the later ones. So maybe we can come back together and go over the answer to 14. So give everyone like 20 more seconds. Okay, so the first one, hopefully some of you saw that this one should be an X. And the reason why this one is wrong is we only have two of the three parts here. So we have the part that increments, we have the part that tells it when to stop, but we don't have the part that creates the variable I. So if you were the computer and you were looking at this, you'd be like, okay, I want to count to 4, but I don't know where to start. I could be starting at 3, I could be starting at 1, could be starting at a negative number. So there's not enough information here. So the computer isn't going to know what to do. So this is an incorrect for loop. And hopefully some of you got that this one is correct. So this is similar to the one we were looking at before. It has all three parts. It has the semicolons in between. It's got the parentheses around it. It has the curly braces here. And it has something on the inside. That's all the parts you need. So this one is going to be correct. And for those of you who tried out the bonus, what it would look like would be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is what it would print out.
はい。じゃあ、答え合わせをしていきます。まず最初の左上の、for loop ですが、これは間違っています。なぜかっていうと、for loop の括弧の中には3つ必要だって言ったよね。variable を作るところと、何があったらループが終わるのか。で、あとはその変数 variable がどういうふうに変わっていくのかって3つのパートが必要なんだけど、最初の変数を作るところ、var i equals なんちゃらっていうところが、この最初の for loop は書いてないので、これは間違いです。なので、2つ目の方は正しいです。2つ目はちゃんと、for loop があって、シンボル、記号も全部正しいし、3つの今言ったパートもちゃんとあるので、2つ目が正解です。で、もしアウトプット書く余裕があった人は、これは i が5から始まって10になったら終わるっていう for loop なので、アウトプットは5、6、7、9、10が正解です。
Alright, so now let's give it another try with part 2.
じゃあ、2問目、ページ15の問題をみんなで解いていきましょう。今度もさっきと同じように、正しいと思う for loop の書き方の方にチェックをつけてください。もし時間があったら、右の四角いところにアウトプット、何がプリントアウトされるかなっていうのを書いてみてください。
So right now, everybody must be working on the page 15. 今、
Yes.
15ページ目の問題を解いてもらってると思います。頑張ってね。It's hard. うん。みんなかなり上級な内容を勉強してますね。すごいな。Yes, 餃子です。Dumpling, because Greg-san likes dumplings. I'm honoring Greg, teacher Greg, for today.
As soon as this class is over, I will probably go cook some dumplings.
Don't eat me.
I didn't get a chance to eat today because I was debugging the website all morning.
どこに売ってるんでしょうね、この被り物ね。内緒。It's a secret where I got it. All right, you guys.
So
How did it go?
Yeah, let's take a look at these problems. So the first one, we've got all 3 parts that we need. But if you take a look, there's something missing. There's a lot of symbols that we usually have on this first line that aren't there. So we usually have some parentheses around the outside, and we usually have semicolons in between the statements. And the reason we have those is because right now it doesn't know where this 100 ends and where the I begins, and everything kind of clusters together. It's really hard to tell it apart. So we need to have the semicolons added in there so that the computer knows what is what. So we would add in a semicolon here, and we'd add in parentheses here to fix that one. But without any of those changes, unfortunately, this one was not correct. But the second one, if we take a look, it's got 1, 2, 3 parts, and it's got all the semicolons and parentheses. And so this one is correct. So if we take a look at what this is actually going to print, it's actually got two things on the inside now, which is cool, because we're saying that it doesn't have to just be one thing that you do over and over again. You can do a sequence of things. So what it's going to do, let me make this smaller. It's going to first say H, where am I taking? Let's say H is now equal to, and then the next thing it's going to do is it's going to print it. So it starts at 0, which is something new. Usually it starts at 1, but you can start at 0. 0 is a perfectly good number. And now it's going to go through the loop again with H equal to 1. So it's going to print out H is now equal to, and now it prints out 1. And it's going to keep doing this. And it's going to just keep going. And it's going to take a while. So I'm not going to do it myself. I would let a computer do it. And it's going to get all the way until H is now equal to 10. And then it will say, we're all good here. And it'll move on.
はい。じゃあ、ページ15の答え合わせいきます。最初の左上の、コードを見てみると、確かに3つ、さっき言った必要な3つのパートはあるよね。変数を作るところ、var I equals something で、ループがいつになったら終わるのか、I is equal to less than or equal to something で、最後に、I がどれだけループするごとに変わっていくのか、I++ っていうところは合ってるんだけれども、さっきパソコンに教えるために必要な文法であるこの記号、カッコだったりとかセミコロンだったりとかが一切全部がごっそり抜けちゃってます。なのでパソコンは、この100の後ろのスペースとかもわからないから、パソコンがこれを見ると I equals 100, I less than equal 140, I plus plus みたいな感じになっちゃって、どこがどこで区切ってるのかわからないので、これをパソコンにあげたら何もしてくれません。ということで最初の問題は間違いです。2つ目を見ると、ちゃんとこの記号全部、カッコだったりとか、セミコロンだったりとか、ヘニョヘニョカーリーブレイセスだったりとかが全部あるし、必要な3つのパーツも全部揃っているので、2つ目の文法が正しいです。で、じゃあアウトプットは何かっていうと、このヘニョヘニョの中を何回も実行されるよね。ってことで中を見てみると、h is now equal to っていうテキストの後に、variable h がプリントアウトされてます。なので、最初のループでH はよく見るとこれ1じゃなくて0から始まってるのに気づいたかな？もちろん何の数字を入れてもいいので0もちゃんとした始まり方です。なので最初は H is now equal to 次の行に0。で次のループで H is now equal to 1。H is now equal to 2。H is now equal to 3。ね、何回も手で書くのめんどくさいよねってことで、これをループに全部投げると、こういうこの点のところは H is now equal to 234567890って多分みんな分かってると思うけどがプリントアウトされて最後の数字が10で終わります。はい。
All right. So the next one we're going to be doing is about cookies. So now instead of checking whether things are right, we're going to look at a for loop that's about how many cookies we've eaten, and we're going to guess what the outcome is going to be at the very end. So we're going to try and guess what the value of cookies eaten will be once this for loop is done running.
次はページ16の問題をみんなで見ていきたいと思います。この左の黄色のコードを読んで、この cookies eaten 食べられたクッキーの数っていう variable が最終的に何になるのかをみんなで考えてみてください。最終的にこのループが全部終わった後にこの cookies eaten っていう variable 箱の中にどんな数字じゃないかもしれないけど数字が入ってるのかをみんなで考えてこの青い四角のところに書いてください。はい、じゃあ黙々タイムどうぞ。
And just to make sure, if you want to type in a number, what you can do is be on this click tool and then click twice on the question marks, and then you can type in anything you want. So if I think it's 10, I can type in 10 here, or maybe I can type 20. Up to you.
この数字の入れ方だけど、このクエスチョンマークをダブルクリックすると多分直接テキストボックスに変わるの、テキストボックスに変わると思うので、そしたら好きな数字じゃなかった。cookies eaten の最終的な数字を中に入れてください。
I'm eating cookies now. Makes me hungry. It's time for Girl Scout cookies in America, right?
Oh, I didn't know it changed based on the time of year.
Studying with the cookies, always a good idea. Hi, 皆さん頑張ってね。いくつクッキーを食べたんでしょうか
All right, I think we are a little behind the schedule. So Greg, shall we move ahead with the 答え合わせ?
Maybe we'll make this the last one. So if we're going through this one, we're going to start out with cookies eaten equals 0. And now it's going to loop through. Before we had the variable equal called I. This time we're going to call it day because maybe we're going through the days of a week. So we start on day equals 1. And then we're going to set cookies eaten equals to whatever it was before plus 1. So it starts at 0, it goes to 1. And then it's going to go through again with day equals 2. And then day equals 3 all the way through. And so it's going to go from 1 to 7, which means there's going to be 7 days, 7 cookies eaten. And so the final value should be 7.
はい、じゃあ答え合わせです。最初に cookies eaten という variable 箱に0っていう数字が一番最初のラインで、定義されるよね。なので最初に入っている数字は0です。で、じゃあこの for loop を見ていくと、day、日数、日にちが1から7になるまで繰り返す。なので7回繰り返すことになるよね。7回何を繰り返すのかっていうと、cookies eaten を cookies eaten プラス1。つまり1ずつどんどん足していくってことなので、0から始まって1ずつ足して、それを7回やると何かっていうと、最終的な答えは7になります。Right?
All right. So now it's time for us to go back to our breakout rooms, and we're going to be using the site that I was showing earlier, and you are all going to be making some for loops of your own. So we'll see you all back in the breakout rooms.